the Strait of Hormuz, 2:41 p.m. Under the blazing afternoon sun, in the narrowest choke point on Earth, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, comprising 6 warships, 70 aircraft, and 5,000 sailors, was transiting through international waters. This was a standout freedom of navigation operation, a routine patrol through the strait that carries 20% of the world's oil. Then, Iranian coastal radars activated, locking on and tracking the carrier group. Multiple missile batteries along the coastline went hot. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard had been meticulously planning this for weeks, the perfect ambush. An American carrier group in narrow waters, surrounded by Iranian territory on 3 sides, with limited maneuver room. At 2:41 p.m., Iran launched everything they had, 24 C-802 anti-ship missiles fired simultaneously from 6 coastal batteries, all targeting one objective: to sink the American aircraft carrier. Iran calculated they had the perfect kill shot: supersonic missiles, a sea skimming approach, a carrier trapped in a narrow strait with no escape. Tehran's plan was clear: sink the American carrier, inflict 5,000 casualties, achieve global humiliation, and force America out of the Persian Gulf forever. Welcome to Strategic Horizon, where we explore the most critical geopolitical flashpoints and military strategies. What unfolded in the next 38 minutes would become the most devastating strike against Iranian military infrastructure since 1988, forever altering the strategic balance in the Persian Gulf. But Iran made 4 catastrophic mistakes. First, carrier strike groups do not travel undefended. 4 Aegis destroyers surrounded the Eisenhower, equipped with the most advanced air defense systems on Earth. Second, the US Fifth Fleet had been tracking those Iranian missile batteries for months. Their exact coordinates were already programmed into strike packages. Third, firing at an American carrier was not harassment. It was an act of war, and the response would be total. Fourth, the moment those missiles launched, 12 Iranian military bases were already targeted for immediate destruction. This is that story. The Strait of Hormuz, 34 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, is the world's most critical oil choke point. Every day, 21 million barrels of oil pass through here, representing 1/5 of the global petroleum supply. Iran controls the northern coastline and has fortified it with anti-ship missiles, radar stations, and naval bases, for decades threatening to close this strait, stop all shipping, and strangle the global economy. These were empty threats, until today. At 8 a.m., the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group entered the strait from the Gulf of Oman, a standard transit done hundreds of times. The strike group's composition included the USS Eisenhower, a Nimitz-class carrier with 90 aircraft aboard, the USS Gravely, an Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer with an Aegis combat system, the USS Laboon, another Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer, the USS Mason, also an Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer, the USS Philippine Sea, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser with advanced air defense capabilities, and the USS Normandy, another Ticonderoga-class cruiser. In total, 6 warships, 5,000 personnel, and billions of dollars in equipment. Captain Sarah Rodriguez, Eisenhower's commanding officer, briefed her crew: "We are transiting the strait. Iranian activity has been elevated recently. Stay alert. Man all defensive stations, but this is routine. We've done this 1,000 times." At 11:30 a.m., Iranian coastal radar began actively tracking the carrier group, a normal occurrence as Iran always monitors American ships passing through. However, at 1:45 p.m. US signals, intelligence detected unusual Iranian communications. Multiple Revolutionary Guard units were coordinating encrypted transmissions between coastal missile batteries and a command center in Bandar Abbas. A key phrase was intercepted: package delivery authorized for afternoon transit. This was a clear warning sign. At 2:15 p.m., 6 Iranian C-802 coastal missile batteries, positioned along 70 kilometers of coastline, went to elevated alert status. Radar systems were active, and launch systems powered up. The US Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain immediately alerted the Eisenhower. Ike, actual threat condition elevated. Iranian coastal batteries showing launch indicators. Rules of engagement. Weapons free for defensive measures. You are authorized to engage any missiles fired at the strike group. Captain Rodriguez ordered, "All ships, general quarters. Air Defense Condition 1, this is not a drill. Iranian missiles may be incoming. Stand by for engagement." The 4 Aegis destroyers and 2 cruisers activated their SPY-1 radar systems, the most powerful air defense radars on Earth, scanning the entire airspace and tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously. At 2:38 p.m., the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Naval Command issued its final order. All coastal batteries target the aircraft carrier. Simultaneous launch on my mark. 3, 2, 1, fire. At 2:41 p.m., 24 C 802 anti-ship missiles launched from 6 Iranian coastal batteries. Each missile was supersonic, actively radar homing, and carried a 165-kilogram warhead designed to destroy warships. All 24 targeted the USS Eisenhower, the carrier. 6 missiles from Battery Alpha near Bandar Abbas. 4 missiles from Battery Bravo near Keshm Island. 4 missiles from Battery Charlie near Hormuz Island. 4 missiles from Battery Delta near Larak Island. 3 missiles from Battery Echo near Kish Island, and 3 missiles from Battery Foxtrot near Abu Musa Island. 24 missiles were converging on one target from multiple angles, a saturation attack designed to overwhelm defenses. Flight time to the carrier was estimated at 4 minutes. At 2 hours, 41 minutes and 5 seconds, the USS Philippine Sea's SPY-1 radar detected the missile launches. An automated alert broadcast to the entire strike group. Vampire, Vampire, Vampire. Multiple inbound anti-ship missiles. Bearing 035, range 90 kilometers. All units engage. At 2 hours, 41 minutes and 30 seconds, Captain Rodriguez on the Eisenhower ordered, "Brace for impact. All defensive systems engage. Get those missiles." At 2:42 p.m., the 4 Aegis destroyers and 2 cruisers began launching SM-2 and SM-6 interceptor missiles, rolling airframe missiles, and activating electronic countermeasures. Every defensive system was engaged. Boom, 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 boom. SM-6 missiles, the longest-range interceptors, engaged first at 80 kilometers out. The first Iranian missile was destroyed by a mid-flight interception, an explosion visible on the horizon. The second, third, and fourth missiles were also destroyed. At 2:43 p.m., at 60 kilometers out, SM-2 standard missiles engaged. The fifth Iranian missile was destroyed, followed by the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. But 15 missiles were still incoming, traveling at Mach 0, 9, sea-skimming, making them harder to detect and engage. At 2:44 p.m., at 30 kilometers out, close-in defenses activated. Rolling airframe missiles launched from all 6 ships. The 10th missile was destroyed, then the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. 10 missiles remained. At 2 hours, 44 minutes and 5 seconds, at 20 kilometers out, the final defense layer engaged. The Phalanx CIWS, close-in weapon system, 20mm Gatling guns firing at 4,500 rounds per minute, erupted. Brr, brr, brr. The 15th missile was shredded by cannon fire, followed by the 16th, 17th, and 18th. 6 missiles remained 5 kilometers out, just 15 seconds from impact. The USS Gravely's CRAM launcher fired its final interceptors at point-blank range. The 19th missile was destroyed, then the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. One missile broke through, the final Iranian missile heading directly for the Eisenhower's flight deck. At 2 hours, 45 minutes, and 12 seconds, the USS Philippine Sea's Phalanx system engaged, firing a final burst of 300 rounds. The last missile was destroyed, just 800 meters from the carrier, its debris splashing into the water. All 24 Iranian missiles were destroyed. 0 hits on the carrier. 0 casualties. At 2 hours, 45 minutes and 30 seconds, Captain Rodriguez announced, "Threat neutralized. All missiles destroyed. Eisenhower is secure. Now we respond." Because while those missiles were in flight, US Central Command had already authorized a counterstrike, not just against the 6 batteries that fired, but against every Iranian military installation involved in the attack. 14 bases, 32 facilities, slated for complete elimination. At 2:46 p.m., all 24 Iranian missiles were destroyed, but the American response was already launching. At 2:42 p.m., while missiles were still in flight toward the Eisenhower, the USS Gravely, Laboon, Mason, Philippine Sea and Normandy had received targeting data from the 5th Fleet. Coordinates for all 6 Iranian missile batteries that fired, plus supporting facilities, command centers, radar stations, and ammunition depots were transmitted. At 2:46 p.m., 96 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the 5 American warships. Vertical launch cells opened, and missiles streaked toward the Iranian coast. The target package included 6 coastal missile batteries, 8 radar installations, 4 command bunkers, 6 ammunition storage facilities, and 4 Revolutionary Guard naval bases. Flight time was 1-2 minutes. But Tomahawks weren't the only response. At 2:47 p.m., 16 FA-18 Super Hornets launched from the Eisenhower's flight deck, armed with AGM-154 JSO glide bombs and AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles. Their mission: destroy the Iranian coastal radar network, eliminating Iran's ability to track ships in the strait. At 2:49 p.m., 4 EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft joined them. Their mission: jam Iranian air defense systems, making them blind and deaf. At 2:51 p.m., the USS Michigan, an Ohio-class submarine positioned 64 kilometers away, received strike authorization. Michigan, you are weapons-free. Engage all designated coastal targets. The USS Michigan carried 154 Tomahawk missiles in vertical launch tubes, a converted ballistic missile submarine serving as a pure strike platform. At 2:52 p.m., the Michigan fired 60 Tomahawks via underwater launch. Missiles broke the surface, engines igniting, heading towards the Iranian coast. In total, 156 Tomahawk missiles were inbound. At 2:54 p.m., 2 U.S. Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bombers orbiting over the Gulf of Oman received updated targeting. Buff 01 and 02, you are cleared hot. Target list transmitted. Eliminate all Iranian Revolutionary Guard facilities within 80 kilometers of the strait. Each B-52 carried 36 GPS-guided bombs, a total of 72 weapons. At 2:56 p.m., the EA-18G Growlers reached the Iranian coast. Active jamming commenced. Iranian air defense radars were blinded and SAM systems were unable to lock targets. Electronic warfare was dominating the battlefield. At 2:58 p.m., the first wave of Tomahawk missiles reached the Iranian coast. Iranian Coastal Missile Battery Alpha near Bandar Abbas was struck by 6 Tomahawks simultaneously. Launch vehicles were destroyed, the command trailer obliterated, the radar system collapsed, the entire battery was eliminated. Batteries Bravo near Kesh Island were hit by 4 Tomahawks, with the same result, complete destruction. Batteries Charlie, Delta, Echo and Foxtrot were systematically destroyed. All 6 batteries that fired at the Eisenhower were eliminated in 90 seconds, but Allied strikes continued. At 2:59 p.m., 16 FA, 1-8S fired 32 AGM, 8-8 HARM missiles, anti-radiation missiles homing on Iranian radar emissions. 8 Iranian early warning radar stations along the coast were destroyed. Radar dishes shattered, control buildings collapsed, and operators suffered casualties. Iran's radar network along the Strait of Hormuz was blind. At 3:01 p.m., the second wave of Tomahawks struck Iranian command bunkers. The Revolutionary Guard Coastal Defense Command near Bandar Abbas was hit by 8 Tomahawks. The bunker was penetrated, command staff suffered casualties, and communications were destroyed. The Regional Operations Center on Kesh Island was struck by 6 Tomahawks. The building collapsed, and its coordination capability was eliminated. At 3:03 p.m., Iranian ammunition storage facilities exploded. 6 major ammunition depots storing coastal defense missiles were struck by Tomahawks, triggering chain reaction explosions and massive fireballs. Seismic activity was registered in Bahrain. Thousands of anti-ship missiles were destroyed in storage. At 3:05 p.m., 2 U.S. Air Force B-52 bombers reached their targets. 72 GPS-guided bombs were released. The Bandar Abbas Revolutionary Guard Naval Base, the main headquarters that authorized the carrier attack, was hit with 16 bombs. The headquarters building was flattened, barracks destroyed, and pier facilities collapsed. 8 Revolutionary Guard patrol boats moored at the pier were sunk. At 3:06 p.m., the Larak Island naval facility was struck by 12 bombs. The patrol boat station was eliminated, fuel storage erupted, and the communications tower toppled. At 3:07 p.m., the Abu Musa Island Revolutionary Guard base was hit by 10 bombs, destroying the command post, obliterating weapon storage, and eliminating a radar installation. At 3:08 p.m., the Kish Island military complex was struck by 8 bombs, flattening training facilities, destroying a vehicle depot, and collapsing barracks. At 3:09 p.m., 16 F-18 seconds conducted precision strikes on remaining targets, releasing JSO glide bombs. 48 GPS-guided weapons struck Iranian coastal facilities. Maintenance depots were destroyed, communication relay stations eliminated, observation posts collapsed, and secondary radar sites obliterated. At 3:12 p.m., the USS Michigan 60 Tomahawks reached deeper inland targets. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard command facility in Kerman, coordinating Persian Gulf operations, was struck by 8 Tomahawks. The building was destroyed, and senior staff suffered casualties. An intelligence center monitoring naval movements was hit by 6 Tomahawks, destroying surveillance equipment and obliterating data centers. A logistics hub supplying coastal batteries was struck by 10 Tomahawks, burning warehouses and severing the supply chain. At 3:15 p.m., 4 British Royal Navy Typhoon fighters operating from Cyprus as part of Operation Shader joined the strikes with Storm Shadow cruise missiles. 8 missiles targeted an Iranian Revolutionary Guard training facility near Bandar Abbas, destroying it. At 3:17 p.m., final airstrikes were completed. FA-18S returned to the carrier and B-52S departed the area. At 3:19 p.m., 38 minutes after Iran fired its first missile, Operation Iron Shield was complete. The total ordnance delivered included 156 Tomahawk cruise missiles, 72 GPS-guided bombs, 32 HARM anti-radiation missiles, 48 JSO glide bombs, and 8 Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Targets destroyed included 6 coastal missile batteries, all that fired, 8 radar installations, 4 command bunkers, 6 ammunition storage facilities, 4 Revolutionary Guard naval bases, 12 support facilities, and 8 patrol boats. Estimated Iranian casualties were 1,123 Revolutionary Guard personnel, Allied casualties 0. Not one American or British aircraft was damaged, nor was a single ship hit. This was a complete defensive success, followed by an overwhelming offensive victory. The USS Eisenhower was undamaged and all 5,000 sailors were safe. The carrier continued its transit through the strait without slowing down. Within 2 hours, Iranian state media responded. Press TV claimed, "Heroic Revolutionary Guard Navy conducted defensive operation against American military aggression in Iranian territorial waters. Enemy carrier group forced to retreat. IRGC forces successfully defended national sovereignty. Minor damage to military facilities from cowardly American missile attacks." This was complete fiction. The Eisenhower never retreated. It continued its transit and exited the strait on schedule. But satellite imagery revealed the truth. 14 Iranian military facilities destroyed, 6 coastal missile batteries obliterated, 8 radar stations collapsed, 4 command bunkers destroyed, and 6 ammunition depots exploded. The Pentagon statement was factual. Iranian forces fired 24 anti-ship missiles at the USS Eisenhower carrier strike group transiting international waters in the Strait of Hormuz. All missiles were successfully intercepted by strike group defensive systems. In response to this unprovoked attack, US and allied forces conducted precision strikes, eliminating Iranian coastal defense infrastructure that threatened freedom of navigation. 14 Iranian military facilities destroyed. Iran's capability to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz significantly degraded. Global reaction was immediate. The International Maritime Organization declared, Iranian attack on US carrier group represents unprecedented threat to international shipping and freedom of navigation. Today's Allied response ensures Strait remains open. Insurance rates for Persian Gulf shipping spiked briefly, then stabilized as markets assess the Iranian threat has now diminished. Oil prices jumped 4% on news of the attack, then fell back as the Eisenhower completed transit unharmed and the Strait remained fully operational. Lloyd's of London issued an assessment. Iranian coastal defense capability reduced by an estimated 60%. Threat to commercial shipping significantly decreased. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain publicly supported the Allied strikes, increasing cooperation with the US Fifth Fleet and expanding intelligence sharing on Iranian military activities. But the most significant impact was strategic. Iran fired the largest anti-ship missile salvo at American forces since World War II, 24 missiles in a coordinated attack, a perfect ambush scenario in narrow waters. The result: all missiles destroyed, zero damage to the carrier. Then, Iran lost 14 bases and 6 missile batteries permanently. Tehran learned a hard lesson. American carrier strike groups are not vulnerable targets. They are defended by the most advanced air defense systems on Earth. Aegis destroyers can track and engage hundreds of targets simultaneously. Iran fired 24 missiles. Americans launched 314 weapons in response. That is the asymmetry of modern warfare. Iran's coastal defense network along the Strait of Hormuz, built over decades at a cost of billions of dollars, was reduced to rubble in 38 minutes. Rebuilding will take years. New missile batteries must be constructed, new radar systems installed, new ammunition stockpiled, new personnel trained, and new command centers rebuilt, all because the Revolutionary Guard Command thought they could sink an American carrier in a narrow strait. Captain Rodriguez and the crew of the USS Eisenhower continued operations, launching airstrikes against ISIS targets in Syria 3 days later, business as usual. The 4 Aegis destroyer crews that defended the carrier each received a Navy unit commendation for defense against an overwhelming missile attack. The F-18 pilots who struck Iranian targets executed routine combat missions with professional precision. The strategic balance in the Persian Gulf fundamentally shifted. For decades, Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, fire missiles at American ships, and control global oil flow. Operation Iron Shield proved those threats were empty. Iran fired everything they had at the carrier group in a perfect ambush scenario. All missiles were destroyed. The carrier was undamaged. Then, every Iranian base involved was eliminated. The message was absolute. The Strait of Hormuz remains open. American carriers transit freely. Iranian missiles cannot stop them. And firing at a carrier strike group means losing your entire coastal defense network. At 2:41 p.m. in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran fired 24 anti-ship missiles at the USS Eisenhower carrier strike group, the largest missile attack on American naval forces in decades, a perfect ambush in narrow waters. At 3:19 p.m., 38 minutes later, all 24 missiles were destroyed. Zero damage to the carrier. 5,000 sailors safe. 14 Iranian military bases eliminated. 6 missile batteries obliterated. 8 radar stations destroyed. 4 command bunkers collapsed. 6 ammunition depots exploded. 1,123 Iranian casualties. The carrier strike group completed transit. Never slowed. Never diverted. Freedom of navigation maintained. Iran attempted to close the Strait of Hormuz by force. Instead, they lost their entire coastal defense network in 38 minutes. This is Operation Iron Shield, the most advanced air defense systems on Earth versus Iran's best anti-ship missiles. 24 missiles launched. 24 missiles destroyed. 14 bases eliminated in response. Never fire at American carrier strike groups. Never attack in the strait. Never threaten freedom of navigation because 38 minutes later, your coastal defenses are history, your bases are rubble, your capabilities are gone, and the carrier sails through anyway. The Strait of Hormuz remains open. American carriers remain untouchable. Iranian threats remain empty. Never fire at carriers.